Hey guys, welcome to another video here on the AviationPro channel. In this video I'm going to answer 50 beginners questions about VATSIM in under 15 minutes. So I've got here a list of questions that has been asked a lot on Google or questions that have been asked to me a lot of times now and in the past, and also questions that I had myself in the past when I was new to VATSIM. So I got 50 of them. I randomized their order in order to keep it interesting, so we have a different topic each and every question, and I'll try to do it in 15 minutes. So I'll try to do my best to keep this as short as possible. There's going to be a clock right here. This is going to keep the time, and I will have 18 seconds per question, kind of 3 seconds to announce the question and then 15 seconds to answer it on average. So here we go. Do I need a weather engine? My personal opinion, yes. A weather engine really adds a lot of dynamic to your flight, and just make sure that you're using the same weather as air traffic controllers, which is the real world weather. Because if you're not doing that, your weather, might be QNH 1013 and the controller gives you QNH 1000, and if you enter that in your altimeter, your altitude is going to be way off. How to file a flight plan? You can either file a flight plan using your pilot client. You can simply fill the form and send it, or you can already pre-file a flight plan in VATSIM. Make sure you watch my tutorials on how to exactly fill in these forms. Why is the audio quality so bad? Well, that's basically because VATSIM is running on old audio service and voice systems, but they are actually improving the codec, and a new voice system will be released soon, which should improve the audio quite a bit. How to observe? Well, you simply need to install an ATIS client and then log into the VATSIM network with an observer call sign. Make sure to check out my Thursday's video on how to become an air traffic controller for more information. Do I need to file a flight plan? In the real world, when you're flying small VFR flights, it's not really necessary, but on VATSIM they request you to file a flight plan in any case, especially when doing IVAR flights. The controller, when logging in, just wants to know where you're going and what you're doing, so make sure that you always file a flight plan. When to contact tower? Well, if you're departing and ground is online, they will give you a handoff, and otherwise you'll be contacting tower for your clearance already. On approach, again, the approach controller will give you a handoff, and if there's no ATC, if only tower is online on approach, then just contact tower as soon as you're established on the ILS approach, like 12 nautical miles from the runway. What is the default squawk code? Now, I always learned that 2200 is the default squawk code for any IVAR flight on VATSIM, 7000 for a VFR flight in Europe, but this differs a little bit per region, so make sure that you actually look it up for your region. What VATSIM server do I need to choose? When you connect to VATSIM, you'll see that there are multiple VATSIM servers. Simply pick the one that makes most sense. If you live in Europe, pick the European or UK server, not the Oceania server, because you want to pick the server with the lowest ping. And yes, they are all connected, so don't worry, you will see other traffic on the other servers as well. How to fly SITs and stars? Well, I think that's very difficult to explain under 15 seconds. Basically, the best things to do is to have a flight management system in order to properly follow an RNF SIT or star. You could also get some freeware alternatives like the ZIBO mod in order to program SITs and stars. Do I need a payware aircraft add-on? Not per se, especially if you're flying general aviation aircraft. One of the default aircraft will do, but as soon as you get into the airliners, having a flight management system, a proper flight management system is pretty necessary in order to navigate through the virtual skies. But again, there are freeware alternatives like the ZIBO mod. How do I get started with all this? Visit the VATSIM website, there's a lot of information there. Watch YouTube videos because there are a lot of tutorials and VATSIM full flights out there, and get in touch with other people in order to ask any questions that you may have. When to contact approach? Well, again, this depends whether there's no ATC or whether there's actually already ATC. Normally tower will give you a handoff, or on the chart it's stated that you have to contact the departure or approach controller by yourself. When you're arriving into an airport, usually you can wait for a contact me message that the controller will send you. So you receive a text message as soon as you enter their airspace, and then the controller expects you to tune their frequency and get in touch with them. How do I do shared cockpit? You simply pick a second chair and put it next to you and invite a friend over. No, just kidding. Well, you actually will be able to do shared cockpit with a few add-on aircraft, for example the Majestic Dash 8 or the Aerosoft Airbus, and what will happen is that one of you will log in as a pilot with a particular call sign, and the other will log in as an observer with almost the same call sign. And in this way you can do the shared cockpit, but I bet you can read more tutorials about this. What does VATSIM stand for? It stands for the Virtual Air Traffic Simulation Network. Can I fly the Concord? Well, if you are allowed to fly the Concord, yes. but if you can fly the Concord is a different question. Just make sure that you actually know how to operate the airplane. The only aircraft that are not really allowed are like hot air balloons and space shuttles. What is ATIS and how do I listen to it? Well, ATIS stands for Automatic Terminal Information Service. It's basically a continuous broadcast on a particular frequency, giving you information about the weather and the active runways at an airport. So it's just like any other frequency. When a controller pops online, it will also open up an ATIS frequency, and you can simply tune that in to listen to the ATIS via the radios, or in your pilot client you can right click on the frequency and request a controller info on the ATIS frequency so you can read the information in text format, which is usually what I do. How to read a METAR. Now the METAR is a textual format of the current weather situation at the airport. There are certain METAR decoders actually on the internet available where you can just plug in the METAR and get more information. But over time you will learn more about how to read the METAR. It comes with experience. How to become an air traffic controller. Well, hey, I just uploaded a video on that very topic last Thursday. It's a little bit more cumbersome because you need to get through training and get ratings, but it's worth the effort, so make sure you check it out. Where do I find routes? Well, there are a couple, like Route Finder, the Flight Plan Database, FlightAware, which is especially useful for US flights. Otherwise, you can also use SkyVector to kind of generate your own route and follow the airways along and try to come up with a route yourself. What does information Alpha, Bravo, etc. mean? Well, that's simply the identification letter of the current ATIS information. So when there's, for example, a runway change, the information will change from Alpha to Bravo, and that simply makes sure that all pilots are aware that the current information is Bravo, and if you still have the Alpha information, you know that you need to listen to the ATIS again in order to get the latest information about the airport and weather. What are pilot ratings? Now, while air traffic controllers require the ratings to actually be allowed to control, pilots don't really need pilot ratings, but the pilot ratings are really there to gain more knowledge about various topics, and the higher the pilot rating, the more experienced you can tear yourself to be, basically. Do pilots require training? Now, while tying in with the previous answer, no, pilots do not have to receive training. However, it's strongly recommended that before you make your VATSIM flight, that you actually know what you're doing. So make sure you take the responsibility of training yourself offline first before you join VATSIM and make a flight there. Can I fly military aircraft? Yes, you are actually allowed to fly military airplanes as long as you make flights that are normal, from A to B without doing any special operations. If you want to do special operations, you have to become part of a military simulation group or division, and only then you will be allowed to do things like dogfights or tanking in the air or escorting other traffic. Can I fly without a microphone? Well, yes, technically you can. You can via text communicate with air traffic controllers as well. I find it personally quite cumbersome, and it just makes it so much more realistic if you are able to get a cheap headset and actually talk to the air traffic controller. So make sure you do keep that in mind. Should I begin with VAVAR or IVAR? I'd say VAVAR actually. Make sure that you're actually able to fly simple circuits around an airport, and when there happens to be air traffic control line at that airport, you can add ATC phraseology to the mix and you can build your way up from there. You don't have to really fly cross-country flights, but start with the VAVAR circuits. It's really helpful. What is Cross the Pond? It's VATSIM's biggest biannual event. Twice a year people will fly from Europe to the US or from US to Europe, and there's just simply a lot of traffic across the ocean with a lot of ATC, and it's just a mess, but it's great fun. Who's online on VATSIM? Well, there are certain tools that you can use in order to check it out, like SurfInfo or VATSpy or VATMap. Can I simulate emergencies? Yes, you can, but do not always expect the air traffic controller to be willing to fulfill that request. Always ask the air traffic controller if you want to simulate a particular emergency before you actually do so, because the controller might simply not have the time to deal with that, if it's already very busy or if there's an event going on at the airport. Where can I make flight plans? There are certain tools again, like PFPX, Professional Flight Planner X, that you can use, or use SimBrief, which is a browser-based flight plan creation tool, and for free. Great stuff, check it out, simbrief.com. Where can I find events? On the VATSIM homepage you can find a list of events that are coming up. You can also check the forum for fly-in notices, but also the local divisions like the European division or the local VACs. Their homepage usually also contains local events or events that are crossing that country. How to do model matching. Now I can only give you the prepared perspective. I use Fly by Boston Virtual AI. It's a pretty simple process. You simply install a bunch of models. They come with a custom rule set, and this rule set determines which aircraft to display when, and you can simply load that into your pilot client. but again, there are probably tutorials about this as well. What if I don't understand an air traffic controller? Well, simply ask for a say again. So KLM 123, say again. Then the controller will repeat. If you still don't understand, ask them to send the instruction via text, so you really see it in text and see what's happening. If you still don't understand what's happening, disconnect and find out what you did wrong and how you can improve next time. How do I set a push-to-talk key? Again, it's also possible in a pilot client like vPilot. You can simply assign a joystick button or a keyboard button. The way I do it is simply set a keyboard button, and then in my simulator I've set multiple joystick buttons to code for that keyboard key so that I can use multiple buttons on multiple joysticks to transmit on the VATSIM network. What is the default frequency? Well, there's not really any default frequency. Maybe you mean Unicom. Unicom is the frequency where pilots can interact with each other and tell each other what they're doing and where they're at. And that frequency is 122.8 and 122 or 122.8. And via your pilot client, you can type in text to other pilots and tell them what you're doing. How to get the weather? Well, of course, you can check any weather website basically, but you can also go into your pilot client and type .METAR and then the ICAO code of the airport. Hit enter and it will give you the current METAR at the airport that you requested. Which is better, VATSIM or IVAO? That's kind of a tough question. I've never flown on IVAO, so I can only kind of judge from videos that I've seen. So I cannot really give you a fair answer, but let me just say this. I prefer quality over quantity, as with other things in life as well. But no, I grew up with VATSIM, and I bet IVAO is a great network as well. Make sure you watch some videos and make the choice yourself. I can't understand ATC. Well, then either your headset is not working or you simply don't know what the air traffic controller actually means by what the controller says. In that case, disconnect, make sure you look up for some phraseology and make sure you look up procedures so that you know what you're doing before you're going to fly on VATSIM. Who to contact? Well, this really depends on who's online. So for example, if the ground controller's online but there's no delivery, you contact ground for the flight plan clearance, because ground will take over the responsibilities of delivery. For example, if only approach is online, they will also take over the responsibility of tower, ground and delivery. So it's a top-down structure. So based on that top-down structure, you probably have an idea who to contact. How to check current activity and ATC? Well, I've already mentioned these like Servinfo and VetSpy, but you can also install apps on your iPhone or iPad or whatever tablet you're using, like VetMap or VetScope, so you can see the traffic and ATC activity there. Or you can look at the sidebar of vPilot to see which ATC is online in your surroundings. Why are planes around me floating? Well, that simply has to do with people using different simulators. The elevation in different simulators at a particular airport might be different. So you might see that, aircraft who are using X-Plane, for example, are floating around while people using Prepared are just for you from your perspective at ground level. So that's just a side effect of using different simulators on one network. Do I need to pay for VATSIM or is VATSIM free? VATSIM is actually free. You're free to join the network and there's no cost associated with it at all. VATSIM is sponsored by sponsors. I don't know who they are, but that really allows it to be a free network, luckily. So make sure you take good care of it because it's really valuable. What flight simulators can I use on VATSIM? Well, basically you can use the main flight simulators that are out there, like X-Plane and Prepared, but also older version of the Microsoft Flight Simulator side of things. For example, FSX and FS 2004 should still work. How to join VATSIM? Simply go to the VATSIM website and there you can create an account and make sure that you fill in all the information correctly. And that's how you join VATSIM. And if you need any more info, make sure you check out my VATSIM 2017 tutorial series. Can I fly without an FMC? Yes, you can. Again, if you're flying VFR with small airplanes, you don't need FMCs at all. But if you're flying IFR, if you're flying RNF Cits and Stars, you kind of do need an FMC. However, again, there are freeware alternatives like the Zibo mod. And if you're flying classic airplanes that don't have an RNF capability in the first place, yes, you're allowed to fly from VOR to VOR station, for example. So in that case, you don't need it either. How do I call a supervisor? Now, when you need a supervisor, you go into your pilot client and type .wallop and then space and then type the message that you want to send to the supervisor. Wallop basically means to strike someone. And and that basically calls up the supervisor, and then the supervisor will get in touch with you via a message in your pilot client. How to fly without ATC? Well, again, if you're flying without ATC, make sure that you monitor the Unicom frequency and just follow every procedure as published on the chart. So just make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure that you take the responsibility of staying clear of other traffic. And for example, when you see an aircraft on final landing, don't just go on the runway and take off. Take the responsibility to wait. and when the aircraft reports vacated on Unicom, you can take off and report that you take off. When to contact center. Again, just like with approach, just wait for contact me. As a pilot, it's kind of unclear what the exact boundaries are of the ATIS region, so just wait for the controller to send you the contact me as soon as you enter their airspace. What if a controller suddenly pops up? Now this depends also on where you are. When you're on the ground and you're still taxiing, for example, ground pops up, just monitor ground and get in touch with them and report your position and where you're taxiing to. In the air, the controller will likely just send you a contact me again. But just keep monitoring that list on vPilot, for example, to see when ATC pops up. Long haul or short haul? This depends on personal preference. My recommendation would be, if you're still learning how to become a pilot on VATSIM, start with short hauls first, kind of in 1 hour, 1.5 hour flights, where you have enough time to rest in between, but where you can learn a lot in a short space of time, because otherwise you're just wasting your time cruising along the ocean, while you could have learned a lot more doing 4 takeoffs and landings in one session instead of 1 takeoff and landing in one session. And question number 50, is VATSIM realistic? I'd say VATSIM is 90% realistic. The fact that we use real world procedures and real world phraseology and try our best as possible to really simulate all of that in a great amount of detail. Yes, I do think VATSIM is very realistic. The only thing that's not really realistic is that, the audio quality is not really good. It doesn't really compare to VHF radios yet. And, you are faced with people with less experience. While in the real world, of course, a lot of pilots are trained and there's air traffic control at every position. We simply cannot have that on VATSIM, so that's the only downside. But procedure-wise and all that stuff, I think it's very realistic. So there you go. I'm afraid we went over the 50 minutes, but a lot of questions that are now answered, and I definitely hope that it helped. So if you're new to VATSIM and want to learn anything more, make sure to check out my VATSIM 2017 tutorial series, because there's a lot of information in there on how to become a pilot on the VATSIM network. And also check out my last Thursday's videos on how to become an air traffic controller. For now, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.